Complex sentences. Love it.
Yeah. Got a serious hair situation going on here.
You've got a COVID haircut.
Yeah. No, well, to be perfectly honest, I prefer to wear my hair longer, but my fiance doesn't like it, so she nags me every time it gets long. But now I got an excuse. Sorry, honey.
Yeah.
I got a haircut. It just big mop here. So I want to. Is it cool if I pull up the maps again, just for anybody who's watching this who didn't see us on Wednesday?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, because I know Australia is either a category that a lot of people have never been familiar with or haven't thought of in a really long time. And Australia is a big old place. So I want to.
What's
What up, Alex? Thanks for joining, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man. This is fun.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I'm just going to show you guys. Oh, hey, there's Bruno. Hey, Bruno.
How are you guys?
Good. Hey, I'm just showing everybody a map of Australia really quick.
Yeah, cool.
If I can figure this out. Oh, is the map up? Is everybody seeing it?
Yep.
Got it. I can see it.
Got it.
Perfect. All right. So this is Australia. Not everybody in America tends to realize that Australia is roughly the size of America. If you can get a flight from Sydney here on the East Coast to here on the West Coast, it's about a 4-hour flight. So same as like New York to LA. And then the other thing to realize is that, so this is the Tropic of Capricorn. The 30th degree of latitude would run, if it was on this map, would run along right about here. So that's why most of the winemaking in Australia, you know, we generally think about winemaking between the 30th and 50th parallel. So most of the winemaking in Australia comes from the south here. This is detail on where the major wine growing regions are. So of course, a lot of it is concentrated around the East Coast. That's the oldest part of Australia, the colonial Australia. You know, the first English prison colonies were established around Sydney, and so they've got winemaking. And the other thing about it is you've got this mountain range that runs along the East Coast here that provides a shield from the ocean, and also the runoff from the snow from those mountains provides water for a lot of the vineyards down through this area. And those rivers actually run all the way to Barossa Valley, and there's a little detail of Barossa right here. And Barossa is where our winemaker Bruno Tate is joining us from tonight. So, and Bruno's got his video up there of showing kind of the area around the winery.
All right, great.
Welcome, Bruno. Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you guys. Thank you for having us, and hopefully this works with all the technology we've got. So
we did a test call earlier this week to make sure this works. But yeah, Bruno's going to give us a little walk around the winery.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll do that now.
You're the lead, man. You take it and run with it. Welcome to Wyoming, by the way.
Thank you. No, that's cool. Hey, no, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for inviting me along. Hopefully it works, and hopefully I can, just inform you guys of how we make the wine and why ours is probably, well, a little bit different to others, and hopefully when we get to taste the wine, you'll see that. So I thought I'd start down here. I'm just in front of our winery. I'll switch the camera soon, but I'll show you the vineyards. We'll go back into the winery itself. I'll show you how we ferment the wine and what's different about what we do up there. And then we'll go into our barrel shed and we can have a taste of the wine from there. So I'll try and swap this camera about. All right, so hopefully you can see the view from our place. Is the sun, or people can see it? Can people see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Cool. Okay, so we're situated in Lindok region of the Barossa Valley. So we're at the southern end of the Barossa, and we get grapes from our place. We have about 40 acres here. We also get grapes from Roland Flat, which is the middle of the Barossa, and then the northern part of the Barossa. And what's good about it is that even though it's all Shiraz, they have different aromas, different characters. So here it's a little bit more juicier, blueberry type characters, and the northern end is more chocolate type characters. So the Bullbuster is a blend of not only Merlot and Cabernet, but also different types of and different styles of Shiraz as well. So.
And Bruno, they've
Okay,
also got so they've got Ballbuster in their store. They've also got Border Crossing as well as Basket Press Shiraz in the store. And I do love showing people and talking about kind of the distinction between Ballbuster and the Border Crossing, because they're generally pretty close to or similar varietal composition, but the style of the two wines is very different.
Yeah. The reason why we did that, the Ballbuster, the Border Crossing, was to show exactly that. Just we get the grapes from a vineyard in McLaren Vale, but we do bring it up here to the winery here in the Barossa, and we make it go through its paces there. So it does get open fermented basket pressing, but the good thing is, and showing them together, you get the different styles, and really that's based on where they're grown, I suppose. So McLaren Vale's more closer to the ocean, where Barossa's more inland. So we're 2 hours inland from the sea. It's a little bit hotter, and hence you get those more chocolate type characters. So the basket press Shiraz is typically a single vineyard. It's all dry grown, so it doesn't see any irrigation during the growing period, and has to struggle. It's on very sandy soils. It's like walking on the beach 2 hours in. So it's quite sandy, so it produces some nice intense flavours. So history-wise, my mother and father migrated from Italy back in the early 60s, simply because there was no work to be had back in Italy. So there was advertising of Cooper type work here in the Barossa. He was a Cooper. My grandfather was a Cooper. And so they came to the Barossa and worked for local wineries for the next 20 years. There was 4 of us. He had 4 boys. And as we were going through schooling, he did mention to us that being a Cooper, and we saw it happening, was hard work. So he indicated to us to, if we could, go off to school. So I'm actually an electronic engineer. My brother's also an electronic engineer, but I did that for about 10 years, and then decided to come back to winemaking. Again, being Italian, during us growing up, we always made small batches of wines in the backyard. So in the late 90s, that's when we decided to start the winery. We wanted to do it the old way of doing things, like open fermentation, which you'll see in a second, and basket pressing. That was the late 90s, and then in the early 2000s, we hooked up with Southern Starz, and Leil is now part of Southern Starz, and we've been exporting to the States for the last 20 years, which has been great for us. So that's a little bit of history. What I wanted to do was change the camera around. Bear with me. All right, so this is inside our fermentation shed. So as I said to you, we wanted to do things the old traditional way. So open fermentation, which is these tubs, very basic, and basket pressing. So that's one of our old basket pressings, one of the original ones. So what I'll do, I'll briefly explain what we do. So just outside, what you saw here, we crush the grapes. We then pump it, or the must, which is just the berries and the skins, into one of these tanks. And it sits in here for the next 7 days as it ferments. So the fermentation process converts the sugar to the alcohol. But one of the things that's vitally important is that the skins which have the flavour in get mixed up in the juice consistently. So a lot of people just pump over, which means they take the juice from the bottom of the tank and push it to the top of the tank. Being engineers, we wanted to, again, try and make things easier and do it traditionally. So traditionally, one of the other ways is to jump in there and stomp the juice, but also we can plunge. So we've designed, being engineers, we've designed this plunger. So my son's here, Oliver. He's going to get up there and he's going to just show you. It's very basic. It just goes up and down. But what it does, though, is it allows those skins to be submersed in the juice, and all those flavours then come, then get imparted to the juice, and that's why you get that that richness. So again, very basic, but instead of doing this by hand, I don't know, you can see how big the shed is. There's about 10 or so of these big fermenters, and it takes a while. So with this unit here that we designed and created, it allows us to do this thing quite quickly. And as someone said, you've got a period of 7 days to make sure that that juice is at its optimum. After 7 days, it goes into one of these basket presses. Again, larger wineries have more, they're called tank presses, pneumatic presses. The disadvantage with a basket press is it just takes longer to make sure it presses out. That last bit of juice is the stuff that's the most generous in terms of flavour. So the basket presses, we think, produce better, richer type wine. So that's one of our old ones. And as we go to our barrel shed, you can see that we've got here one of our, the larger one, which fits in about 5 tons of.
Hey, Bruno, quick question for you. How many wineries actually use that old style of basket press? I can't recall ever seeing one of those at a winery before.
Look, most of the smaller ones, simply because they're, I mean, from a price point of view, they're not that expensive. But as you start to produce more and more cases, people try and become more time savvy in terms of getting it in and out, and hence they go to the tank presses. So look, I mean, here in the Barossa, the smaller wineries use basket pressing. The larger ones like the Penfolds, they use all the automated tank presses. So yeah.
Cool, thank you.
No, so this one again is just a larger version, stainless steel, but it can fit more fermented juice into it and presses out. So again, the time on the skins is very important to produce or to extract colour, flavour, etc., etc. Time in the press is vitally important to make sure you get that last bit of juice out, and yes, so and again, to produce some nice, rich, balanced, powerful wines that Barossa can produce. So this is our okay. So once it's done there, it then goes into our barrel shed, into one of these barrels. Ballbuster, basket press, Shiraz, even the border crossing is all matured in oak barrels, and for various okay. So one thing I'll show you here, you should be able to read this. So on here, can you guys see that there's a 8SHBW1?
Yeah, sure can.
With the dates? Yeah, so if you look at each of these barrels, they've all got a date and a time. So each of these barrels, we can tell you what year it is, like the 2008. This one's Grenache, and the date. We've also got a date, and that's the last time it was topped up. So one of the hard things about maturing everything thing in oak barrels is you've got to constantly top them up. So over a period of a month, each of these barrels, and we've got about 1,000 in here, lose about 1 litre of wine per month.
Bruno, you said those are
But the
2000, those are 2008 or 2018?
Oh, sorry, 18.
Okay, I was
Sorry,
going to
my
say,
apologies.
surprised you still had 2008 juice in barrel.
No, that's right. 2018. So, but yeah, they get topped up every month. They get tested. But one of the advantages, though, and again, I think at the price point Ballbuster is at, not many people will mature their wine in oak barrels simply because, yeah, it's just time consuming and it adds to the expense. So a lot of people will mature it in stainless steel tanks with oak chips. The other quick thing I wanted to mention was I mature it in oak barrels, not necessarily for the oak flavour, but it's the softness that the oak produces through that the breathing of oxygen through the wood. So it's the softness that I get from the time it spends in wood.
Because most of the barrels you use are older barrels, right, Bruno?
Absolutely. So quite a few of these barrels are like 5 years old. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, different ones are different ages. But the basket press Shiraz, for example, we have newer barrels, brand new barrels for that. And so depending on where the wine goes will depend on what barrels and how many. So this one, for example, you can see is relatively new, but that's probably 3 or 4 years old now. So again, it's the softness that we get. And so hopefully when we get to taste the wine, that's what you guys will taste as well. So again, as I said, you know, it's the open fermentation. We also, back in the vineyard, I forgot to mention that one of the things that we do try and do is we test sugar level, but sugar level is only one indication. It's got to have flavour as well. So sometimes we let the sugar level go quite high to get that rich flavour coming through. Then during the fermentation, we then again try and extract as much we can from the skins. During the pressing process, we allow that to press out, and again, then in the hall here, the barrel hall, we let it soften in the wood. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea and a bit of a story of who we are and what we do. So that's, hopefully that kind of explains a bit. So
yeah, that's fantastic. Appreciate it, Bruno. Yeah. So one of the things that I want to hit on that you mentioned, and is one of the points that I'm always bringing up when I talk about your wines in general, is just what you've shown us, the care and the quality of winemaking, and the relatively small scale of your winemaking. Total production is fewer than about 10,000 cases for Ballbuster, and only a couple of thousand cases each for Wild Ride and Border Crossing, and only a few hundred cases of basket press. So you're 15,000 cases.
Yeah, between 10 and 15,000 cases.
Yeah.
One of the things that we wanted to make sure is that, you know, I mean, we just, as we expand, we didn't want to lose the quality. So when we started, I think back in 2000, we had about 600. We did about 600 cases. Now we're up to 15,000. So the cool thing was that during that period of time, we didn't lower the quality. So
I mean, 15,000 is still very, very small. And one of the comparisons that I very often make when I'm presenting your wines out in my market is Washington wines tend to be of a similar style to Barossa Valley. And when you look in the state of Washington for estate produced wines that are, all barrel fermented and that are, take the kind of quality and care that you put into making every one of your wines. Something like that out of Washington is typically going to be 50% more to twice the price of what you're paying for. Because like Kevin, what do you guys have Ballbuster for in the store right now? $22, $21?
I think it's $20.99. Am I wrong?
$20.99.
Let me check.
But yeah, for like right around $20.
$20.49.
Yeah, so
you gotta pay tax.
That's right about $20 is generally the retail target for most places in the U.S. for this wine, and it's also the Ballbuster. We talk about the pros and cons of wine press and everything, but the 2016 Ballbuster, which any of you guys who are tasting the Ballbuster are probably on 16 right now. That wine is the 15th vintage in a row that's gotten 90 points or better from the Wine Advocate, and it is the only $20 or less red wine in the world that's got a 15-year running streak of 90+ scores from the Wine Advocate. Which, again, we can talk about the pros and cons of wine press, but that shows a level of consistency with the quality of the product that Bruno's making that I think is really important. I keep looking up here. The camera's down here. Anyway,
So
so
that's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. So I first discovered this wine, and I worked at a wine shop in high school, and I'll never forget. We had a case stack, and my boss goes, "Kevin, this is a good wine right here." And I was like, "Oh, great. Yeah. Tell me more about it." He goes, "The only thing you need to know, it's got 93 points from Robert Parker. And that's it." And back then, I was 16. I didn't know anything about wine. I didn't know anything. This is probably 2006. I don't know. 2007. But the name stuck with me, man, and the wines are fantastic. And for you to join us here with the video chat is really, it's an honor. So press aside, we love the wines. Thank you so much.
That's cool. No, I appreciate you. Yeah.
We actually had the wine, I bet you 10, 12 years ago, easily, when we first started doing some business with John in Southern Starz. I think the label, did it used to be more brown or purple?
It was the label for Ballbuster was a kind of reddish brown.
Yeah.
The label for Wild Ride was like a dark blue, like kind of a royal blue, and then the old label for Border Crossing, or I've got those backwards. I think Border Crossing was I forget which one. One of them was blue, one of them was green, one was red.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bruno,
I remember it looked different.
I think that I feel like a lot of stuff in Australia has a story behind it. Tell us why Ballbuster.
Okay. I think at the end of the day, the story on the back is quite apt. So what happened was, as I said, in the late 90s, that's when we started, and as I said, in the early 2000s, we had the Americans walk up the driveway, and they took our basket press, and that got good point scores. And then a year later, we went overseas, and I think it was John Gorman. He said to us, "Look, Bruno, if you can produce something for like, I think it was $15 back then, we could sell buckets of it." So anyway, we came back and we put this. So the basket press is a straight Shiraz, single vineyard, and when we came back, we put this blend together. I think the original blend was 60% Shiraz, 20% Cab, 20% Merlot. We sent it over. And, we put a Post-it note on the front, and we said, "Hey, look, we'd love to call this wine Michelle's Block." And then so a phone call came in the morning, and they said, "Hey, we'd love the wine if you can do it for that price. But the name Michelle's Block, that's a bit tough, we want to." And then we said, "Well, what do you want to call it?" And they came up with this thing called the Ball Breaker or something. And we thought, who the hell would call their wine ball break or ball bust? I mean, you got to be crazy. Anyway, so I think Michelle, my wife, then took the phone and said, John, what are you trying to do to us? He said, look, we're going to put in an order for a whole container. And then I think she said, you can call it whatever you like. So, so I tell that story. And 20 years later, she says to me, look, you can tell the story as long as it doesn't go on her gravestone. So yeah, that was the story behind it. So, yeah, here we are about 20 years later, and it's still going well. So it's a good thing. So, like I said, plenty of people remember it because of the name, but also hopefully the quality of the wine's good in it as well. So yeah, it's been a good trip. Good ride.
I always take a great amount of joy in the surprise that I get from people at how much they like the Ballbuster, because it is kind of a kitschy name, and they expect the wine to be of less serious quality because they're like, it's called the Ballbuster. I don't know, it's not going to be very serious, and then they try it and they're like, oh wow, this is really, really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes it kind of sneaks up on people that way.
Everybody in viewing land, you guys have some questions for Bruno?
Yeah, if anybody has questions, please shout out. And yeah, Bruno, if you want to start walking through a couple of the wines, I don't know what everybody else on the call has with them at home. I am drinking a bottle of the 2015 Ballbuster here.
We put out a lot of Ballbuster.
Yeah.
I don't know if I gave anyone a border crossing.
I got the border crossing.
Oh yeah, okay.
Good.
Yep.
Yeah, and if
15 border crossing.
If anybody, probably nobody has both the Ballbuster and the border crossing in front of them side by side right now. But if you have the opportunity, maybe when you got a couple of, Kevin does, of course.
Yeah, I'm not opening one though.
Okay. So, but if you have the opportunity, maybe when you have some friends over or something like that, or opening these two wines side by side and trying them side by side is one of my favorite things to do, because both McLaren Vale and Barossa Valley are ripe areas. They make very big, supple, rich, ripe wines. But first of all, all of the wines that Bruno makes are very well balanced, which is one of the important distinctions for me, because you can make a wine, and Barossa's a hot area. Hot areas make ripe wines. That's just the basic biology of winemaking. However, the distinction is, do you make big ripe wines that are just, taste like blackberry jam with vodka in them, or do you make big rich wines that are actually balanced and still pair well with food? I'm sitting here next to the leftover of the hamburger that I grilled before coming on this call, that I ate with the first half of this bottle of Ballbuster, and it was fantastic.
What are you going to eat with the second half?
I don't know. I might. Oh, you know what? I got some blue cheese in the fridge.
There you go.
I think it's really interesting that you brought up the Washington State varietals and the blends and compared them to this guy. I've got a 15 Ballbuster, 16 Ballbuster myself. It's awesome. And I happen to love the Washington State AVAs, Col Solare, Fidelitas, and Cooper. And Cooper is actually, when I opened this up, we had leftover Bouffe Bourguignon, thank you very much. And it was a perfect pair, leftover even. But I opened it up, checked the price, and I was actually really amazed. Just because the price points of particularly the Red Mountain AVA in Washington, those points are up here, $70, $80.
Yeah.
And this is a $20 beautiful blend with the same notes the same characteristics almost with the blend, and the food pairing is unbelievable.
Yeah.
How could you come? I'm just curious. How did you arrive at the $20 price point? I guess that's my question, because I think you could command more.
I mean, that's what his. I'll let Bruno answer the question, but yeah, the basket press is his, his higher end one. Yeah, that one that Kevin's got right there.
Yeah. So look, my obvious answer is that obviously I'm getting screwed somewhere along the line here. Look. Again, the back label says it. If you got the Ballbuster, it was all about. And I'll read it for those people that don't have. It talks about the aromas and flavors. It talks about wine appreciation, and it's all subjective. So, what I wanted to share with the Ballbuster especially is this is how I like to make my wine. I want it accessible to the ordinary guy. And hopefully then they come back and not only drink one bottle, but they drink, half a dozen or a case of it. So it was all about putting wine in a bottle that was rich, flavoursome, and people enjoyed it. They came back, they told their mates, and it went from there. So look, one thing I'm super proud of is that we've kept that consistency. We've kept that point score going. It's been great. So, and I suppose we're lucky here in the Barossa simply because we have got the climate to ripen fruit and to create the richness and the characters that you see. So, yeah. So yeah, $20. Hopefully, people go and buy and drink and go and buy another one.
Right.
But yeah, look, I've got the 16. We're on the 16 over here, and yeah, you can smell that richness of blueberries. There's a hint of oak there, but it's that richness that you get. And again, what I've shown you, the basket pressing, the open fermentation, I think it all comes together to produce what we've got in the glass. So.
I have lasagna coming for my wife's birthday tomorrow. I'm gonna save the rest of this for dinner tomorrow night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We ordered it from a restaurant on the other side of the hill called Spoons.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've been delivering some food to Jackson. So Travis and Nicole, support them out.
Good.
I have a question. Does anyone else want to go? I feel like I dominate sometimes on the calls, but
You're the wine bar. You get to do that.
I have a question for you, Bruno. The fires recently were a big deal.
Absolutely.
And I know that it wasn't quite Barossa that was most affected. It was like Adelaide Hills, but that's not far from you.
No, it's not far. I mean, there was certainly that devastation. People lost a lot of land. It was terrible. I mean, it was almost like the whole country was on fire. You had the eastern states on fire. I mean, it was just, it was terrible. And as you said, luckily Barossa escaped most of that. We really didn't have any fires. One of the things, though, just as a side thing, we did have smoke.
Yeah.
And especially this vintage, there was this thing going around where people were testing for smoke taint. And as you guys probably know, that if your vineyard may not have been burnt, but if it's been for a week or so covered by smoke, the fruit is useless anyway. So yeah, but luckily we had a few days of smoke haze around the place and smelling smoke, but luckily for us in the Barossa, unfortunate for a lot of people in the hills, our grapes were all right, and even though quantities were low, we produced some nice stuff here in 2020. So
awesome. Thanks for that. You're not alone. Trust me. I mean, we're in Wyoming, and the way that the wind blows, the California fires end up here.
And the Idaho fires.
And the Wyoming fires. It's hotter, and it seems like it's just a thing that we're going to be dealing with from now on. But glad to hear that you guys were less affected than others. sad, really. You know, it's a bummer.
It's sad for those people, honestly. A lot of people lost vineyards.
I heard like Henschke Hill of Grace burned, you know, and it's like, that's the most expensive Australian wine I've ever had. It was one of those.
Sorry?
That's like the most expensive Australian wine I've ever had.
Yeah.
Henschke Hill of Grace, you know, and I saw that might be gone.
Yeah, I'm not too sure if the vineyard's gone or whether, I'm not too sure. But Hill of Grace or Henschke's are more high altitude. They pick from more Eden Valley, which is still in the Barossa, but it's a higher altitude. So you don't, But it did affect quite a number of people. And as I said, Kangaroo Island, which is not far from here, got burnt out as well. So it was terrible. And now we're facing this this virus, which is even worse.
Yeah,
no doubt. How'd the harvest go this year? Did you get everything done?
Yeah, no, everything. Like I said, I mean, because of the lack of water, we had not a huge amount of tonnage, but what came in was quite black and rich and flavoursome. So. It should be good. Lower quantity, but better quality wine, I suppose. So, yeah.
Awesome.
I often, as I said, I grow myself grapes, but I also buy from other people, and it's sad because you go in there, you pick their fruit, and last year they had 15 tons, and they come in with 2 tons this year, and they've got to put in the same amount of work, but Mother Nature doesn't provide them the water or whatever. And it's terrible sometimes. So, but what do you do? That's Mother Nature. So,
yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah. So, and as I said, I don't know if I explained. I did explain a little bit the McLaren Vale wine.
A little bit, but yeah, you can definitely talk a little bit more about the difference between where you are and McLaren Vale.
Yeah. So as I said outside, Bullbuster, we've been going for the last 20 years, and I think the first vintage of Border Crossing was 2013 or 14, and it was just to try something different. So it was the concept was, hey, let's process it the same way. Let's pick it at the same ripeness that we pick the stuff here in the Barossa, and let's see what comes out. So I found I've got a good friend down McLaren Vale. He's got a vineyard at Aldinga, which is only about 5 minutes, not even that, 3 minutes from the beach. So it's quite close to the ocean. It's older vines. I think they're about 30 years old. But you get that sea breeze coming in every night. So what you'll see if you taste it, you'll see the definite chocolate, blueberry, darker berry in the Bullbuster. When you open the Border Crossing, you'll have more blueberry notes, some more lighter notes. But it's still got that same richness about it that we produce here at the winery. So it is, as Leil said, great to open up side by side. It's when I'm over in the States, I often talk about, Australia is not just one region. We have got many regions, just like France, where they've got the Bordeaux region and the Burgundy region, and part of Australia's, I think, job to do is to promote that a lot more. Unfortunately, the things like the yellowtail has lumped Australia into just one big region, where it's more than that. It's Barossa. Barossa produces some rich styles, and then you've got McLaren Vale, which produce a different style, and you've got other regions as well. So, but as I said, the cool thing about Border Crossing was that it comes out of, it gets produced here, but has certainly different characters than the Bullbuster. So, a lot of people, it's interesting when I take this one out, they like the Border Crossing over the Bullbuster, but at the end of the night, the Ballbuster is the one that's empty. The border crossing has still got wine in it. So what that says, I'm not too sure.
I have had similar experiences.
Yeah, which is strange, isn't it? They say, no, I like the border crossing. It's nice, and whether there's a Swedish tinge to it, I'm not too sure. But the Ballbuster is always the one that's empty. So yeah, and as I said, we've got the basket press here, and as I said outside, this is the one that the US guys took initially back in the late 90s. And this is more single vineyard stuff, so a little bit more serious. So this one here, as I said, is the vines are about 50 years old. They're unirrigated, so they don't see any water during their the ripening period. They get relatively ripe again in terms of those rich flavors. They go through the same process as Ballbuster, but it spends a lot more time in different processes. So the open fermentation, instead of 7 days, it spends 14 days. So a lot longer time on the skins. It goes through the basket press, just like Ballbuster, but instead of a 4-hour press, it'll have an 8-hour press. When it comes into the barrel area here, it'll have newer barrels, brand new barrels, a combination of French and American. And then we'll spend, instead of 1.5, 2 years, it'll spend 3 years in barrel. It then gets blended, or we blend in, depending on the year, we might blend in a bit of fresher stuff that gets bottled, and then spends a lot more time in bottle before we release it. So Ballbuster, we're on the 16 or the 15. This one here, which has just come into the States, is the 14 vintage. And basket press we don't do every year. So if depending on the year is depending on whether we produce a basket press. So yeah, that's our range.
And the basket press also, you guys have it obviously in the store, Kevin. It's one of the smallest quantity imports that we bring in. I think for 2014 vintage, we brought in 76 packs into the U.S. So it is not, and for something that is as inexpensive as it is, and that is relatively rare, and it is of the quality that it is, just an outstanding value. And it's funny to say something is, it's funny to talk about something being a great value, and it's, a little bit higher price point, still not that expensive. But compared to what you would pay for a wine of similar quality and production value from anywhere, really, it's a killer value.
Yeah, totally right. For everybody that's not watching now, that tunes in later, $50.99 at the liquor store, basket press Shiraz, 420 case production, 70 to the States. We've already sold a 6-pack here. I've got 6 more, and I'll keep carrying it. I love this stuff. It's shockingly good value.
Yeah, we just got the 2014 in, I think, beginning of the year, and we've got like 26 packs left in California for this vintage. So,
well, hopefully this video helps sell all those 26 packs here in Wyoming.
Come get it. Come and get it. We're lucky. It's funny. So Jackson has, in the wintertime, quite a Australian visitorship. And it's because the seasons are alternate. So if you love skiing, you can come ski here when it's summertime there. Well, I guess, I don't know. Here's a question, Bruno. Do you guys call the seasons the same as us? Or is winter when it's hot there?
No. Winter. No, we call it. I mean, we have spring and summer. We have spring and autumn, and you have fall. And do you have spring? No.
We say spring.
But autumn you call is fall, isn't
it? But you're in autumn right now.
That's right. Yes.
We're coming into autumn.
Yes.
Grapes grow during the summer.
Yeah.
Exactly. And summer is when it's hot over here, hot as hell. So.
Got it. Well, when it's summer there, it's winter here. And when it's
Absolutely.
summer there, yeah, so people come over, and I get a lot of Australian visitors here at the store in the wintertime for us because they're coming over to ski. And and in fact, Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, our big ski resort here, celebrates Australia Day. I believe it's I don't know.
26th of January.
Oh, January. See, I don't know, but yeah. So we get a lot of Australian visitors, and actually 2 seasons ago, I got a little bit of crap for not having a good Australian section.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, but yeah, we've fixed that problem now.
Oh, good.
But yeah. But no, we talked about this. We did another tasting of an Australian wine on Wednesday. I think one of the new value places to look is Australia. I mean, you think about wines like this for $20. What more do you need? What more do you need?
And
wines.
I proselytized about this a little bit on Wednesday when we were tasting Nugan, and I'll do it again here. You know, the most important thing about as a consumer about supporting Australian wines and helping Australian wines to continue to grow is finding wineries that actually are real people wineries and not made up, fake label wineries, because the U.S. market for Australian wines took a really big hit in the mid 2000s, and I won't get into the entire depth of the story, but there were 3 major factors. One was the recession, which there was that's nobody's specific fault, but the other 2 were overinflated prices for extremely high-end wines, and that fault can be laid at the feet of wine writers in general, and then just over-marketed and poor quality, overproduced wines like Yellowtail and all the rest of the critter wines and everything that were just mass-produced, made-up labels, and that didn't represent any sense of place or anything like this. And Bruno, you touched on a little bit, and I mentioned this at the beginning. That Australia is not just one wine growing region. It's not just one style. Just to the north of you've got the Clare Valley, that is, to me, one of the most amazing and most amazingly under-recognized Riesling producers in the world. Like, Clare Valley Riesling is amazing, and so few people don't know. So few people know anything about it. And then, just the difference in climate between where you are and where the folks at Nugan are. And then, you look over on the West Coast and the people in Margaret River. There is such a diversity of style within Australia that consumers owe it. I sincerely feel that consumers owe it to themselves. People who are passionate about wine and knowing about what kind of wines are produced all over the world really owe it to themselves to take another look at Australia and see what Australia is capable of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, no, we're just
off my soapbox.
No, it's there's a lot more regions out there, a lot more characters. Yeah, a lot of interesting wines here in Australia. So that's the message that we've got to give out, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, this has been awesome, guys. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I tell you, 2 home runs back to back coming from Australia.
Cool.
So can't wait to taste some more coming from over there. And it certainly opened my eyes up, because I'd been steering away from Australia wines for quite some time after all the animals came out.
Yep.
Yeah, all the critter wines.
And
Critters ruined it.
I don't think Rosemount helped at all with any of that either.
And I mentioned, I don't want to completely bag on any specific product, but I mentioned the other brand that is now out in the market that looks to me like that same bubble reforming. So I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that more people get to know wines like Bruno's and like the guys at Nugan and other like real people family estate wineries that are not just made up labels for marketing purposes.
For sure.
No
Well,
doubt.
cheers, gang. Thanks for another fantastic Friday wine tasting.
You too, guys. Thanks for
And
having me again.
yeah,
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah, Bruno.
Cheers.
and
Thanks from Australia.
thank you, Bruno.
Been rocking
Appreciate
with
it.
you for 15
It's
years,
wonderful
Bruno.
to meet
Keep
you.
it up. Don't change, man. Love
Yeah.
the stuff.
No worries.
Come over
Excellent.
and visit us.
Tons of
Jackson.
I
respect.
will. Next time I'm over.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, guys. Cheers.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
We'll get in touch about the podcast.
Kevin's got my email address, so just shoot me an email and we'll figure it out.
You got
I'll link you to right now.
All right.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
Bruno. Thanks so much,
All right,
man.
guys.
Have a
Thanks,
great
Bruno.
night.
It was awesome.
Thanks for joining.
You guys-
Jay, Daniel, Alex, Katie, Amanda. Good to see you all.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. Bye bye.